Back in the prime of his career, Eddie Alvarez became the first fighter in history to hold both the UFC lightweight belt and the Bellator lightweight championship. Now that his career is closing in on its end, the fighter is looking for one last move before retiring. Stay tuned to find out why Eddie wants to leave and more. Let's talk about it in today's video. First and foremost, why does Eddie want to leave? The 38-year-old MMA veteran has had an extremely eventful career, but he wants to come home to the States to finish it. Winning 4 different world championships makes him one of the most decorated and consistent lightweights the MMA world has ever seen. But time gets everyone, and Eddie has only been victorious twice in his last 8 fights across 2 different promotions. The former champ reported his contract was already coming to an end, and when it came time to negotiate an extension with one, Eddie told his agent that he wants to fight in the United States once more. It's understandable too, moving to an entirely different continent and traveling to different countries where each one is more alien than the previous can be pretty exhausting. This is something Alvarez realized when he made the move in the first place, and the plan for one was to start off Eddie in Asia and then use his name amongst the American MMA community to introduce the promotion to the West. The pandemic threw a massive wrench into those plans and delayed them enough for Eddie to realize that he would have to retire before he fights in the state under the One Championships banner. According to an interview Alvarez gave about his departure, he's fully aware that this is most likely the last contract he signed with the promotion as a fighter, and even though he hasn't burned any bridges with the One Championship management, his career would just feel incomplete if he did not compete in his home country in front of his home crowd. Moving on, his performance with One Championship. Alvarez joined One Championship in 2018 when he was 34 years old, entering the tail end of a remarkable career. It was an extremely exciting move too. It's always interesting to see how an elite MMA fighter from the UFC would do in Asia. Considering the hype Eddie carried with him into the Asian promotion, his record of 1 win, 2 losses, and 1 no contest feels a bit lackluster. However, stats can be a little deceiving for longtime veterans like Eddie. His last 4 fights in the UFC had 3 losses too, but he only fought the very best in the world and gave them a hell of a fight each time. Alvarez got knocked out in his first fight by Timofey Nostyukin in March 2019, but ended his 3-fight losing streak he inherited from his UFC days when he submitted Edward Folayong. This earned him a spot in the final of One Championship's lightweight Grand Prix. He missed out on completing the trifecta of winning belts in all 3 major MMA promotions. An injury forced him to withdraw. This marked the beginning of a skid of bad luck for the Underground King. The pandemic often forced him on the sidelines with delays and cancellations, and when he finally returned in 2021 against Yuri Lapicus, the fight ended as a no contest due to illegal strikes on the back of the head. Determined to bounce back, the former champ returned only 3 weeks later in Singapore as one half of a #1 contender fight for the lightweight belt. It wasn't meant to be though. The fighter got dropped in the first round and lost via unanimous decision. Eddie still wanted to continue his quest to become the triple king of MMA by capturing the One belt back in July, but it just wasn't meant to be. Additionally, how does One Championship compare to American promotions? For fighters like Eddie Alvarez and Mighty Mouse Johnson, who earned most of the success in their careers in the United States, One Championship can feel pretty different. The UFC might have the largest global audience, but One Championship is undoubtedly the premium fight promotion in Asia. Despite the difference in audience size and global outreach, the average One Championship fighter makes only $3,000 less than UFC's average of $27,000 per fight, with equally good bonuses on fight night. Promotion deals and PPV shares, if you can get them, can earn you more, but you get a large piece of the pie at one. But let's talk about things Eddie would be more affected by, like the large number of weight classes and the separate system for kickboxing and Muay Thai. A reason why there are more weight classes than the UFC is that One Championship fighters aren't required to cut weight. In fact, it's banned, and that ban is enforced by hydration tests before fights. Coming to the UFC or going to any other American MMA promotion where he will have to cut weight again could be a problem for Eddie. He hasn't dehydrated himself in the past 4 to 5 years, and cutting weight becomes increasingly difficult as you get older. So Eddie might have to go up a weight class and fight bigger guys, which could be challenging considering Alvarez was already a bit small for the lightweight division in the UFC. What's more, what if Eddie returned to the UFC? Hardcore MMA fans would love to see Eddie back in the UFC. The Underground King gave the fans so many wars. His dogfight against Justin Gaethje, his win over Dos Anjos, Barrios that won him the belt, his 2-round firefight with Dustin Poirier. Win or lose, Eddie always came to play, and the fans always got their money's worth. In the UFC, any number of matchups would be fair, interesting, and competitive. Match Eddie up with Tony Ferguson and set it up as a co-main event for a PPV event and watch the money roll in. The MMA community is keen on giving their legends a worthy send-off, and there's no lack of love for Eddie. An extremely interesting fight would be a trilogy decider with Michael Chandler, another fan favorite lightweight. Alvarez and Chandler fought twice when they were both on the Bellator roster, with Chandler winning the first match and Eddie getting revenge in their rematch. A rubber match between the two could be outstanding. And if you really want to see if Eddie has it in him to make another run for the title, Beneil Dariush is a fellow veteran and on the cusp of a title shot with 5 wins in a row. Beating Dariush could definitely get Eddie involved in the conversation, or start him out against Dan Hooker, who's always dangerous and on a recent losing skid, albeit at the highest level. Next up, Eddie's complicated relationship with Bellator. Back in 2013, Eddie was one of the best lightweights in the world, despite never having fought in the UFC. When his contract with Bellator ended, the UFC made a bid to bring Alvarez over, and Bellator failed to make a competitive matching bid. What really soured relationships, however, was the lawsuit Bellator filed against Eddie. When Viacom took over the promotion, they claimed to have matched UFC's offer dollar for dollar, but they just couldn't quantify and match the opportunities being a UFC fighter would grant Alvarez, nor could they match the PPV numbers. On top of it all, Alvarez's contract with the UFC all but guaranteed him a title shot and spots on the main card for major PPV events. Viacom tried to force Eddie to stay with Bellator, but nothing really came of it. This is all in the past though. Bjorn Rebney, the man with whom Alvarez seemed to have the worst blood, is no longer calling the shots at Bellator. He has less than a 20% share now, and it's not really a vocal one. Considering how much of his life Eddie gave to Bellator and the increase in his global star power since his move to the UFC, Bellator should really make Eddie an offer too good to pass up if they want him to finish his career where it started in earnest. Finally, Eddie's advice to young fighters: free agency and fighter pay are the consistent woes of fighters in all organizations, and Eddie is adamant that the MMA youth shouldn't let their promotion control their lives through long contracts. Currently, promotions may sign a new fighter for 6 fights and give him a platform he desperately needs. Within those 6 fights, it is the fighter's responsibility to put as much stock into his name as possible and then renegotiate when the contract is up. They should hold out and go fight by fight, because promotions will swoop in before the contract is up and attempt to add extensions. They must increase their value outside of the contract as soon as possible and let their contracts end rather than try and secure longer, safer careers for less than what their participation should be worth. A fighter's entire audience can change because of one fight, and fighters should approach their careers by fight as well. Even the premium organization, the UFC, treats its fighters as independent contractors despite restricting their ability to fight with other promotions or even in different sports. Where do you think Eddie Alvarez will fight as he makes his return to the United States, and who do you think matches up best with the Underground King? Let us know in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for similar content.